What's up, everyone? Today we're talking about how to play better defense with just a few simple tips or ideas that may help out your squad or your team. So if you like videos like this, obviously hit the subscribe button, leave a like, drop a comment down below with any other additional tips for playing some defense in squad, and let's get to it. Now, when it comes to defense, I think there's a few things that we need to discuss, a few main bullet points that can actually help us play better defense on an objective. The first thing we should talk about is just awareness of where the enemies might be attacking from. Obviously, this can be helped along with good intel from your team. But one thing you can often rely on is that some folks are going to travel the white line. That is the line that connects our capture points between the different objectives. This is something I've referenced in the past. So whether you're an SL or just in a squad, it's usually helpful to have someone look in the direction of what the next objective is. And this is just the most predictable route that enemy forces may travel, depending on the spawns that they have available, or just the fact that the blueberries are going to walk. But this is not a guarantee, and it's not always a suitable route. For example, if we're looking at Black Coast, and if you have a layer where it crosses the main river, you know that they're not going to be able to cross directly on the white line. At least that may not be the most ideal push. So while you could expect a push to follow the white line from train station to torpedo, you probably wouldn't expect that from sub-pin to train station. But sometimes what I'm looking at is more so the direction of the enemy main as it pertains to the defensive point I'm on. So we have the white line between the most active objectives, and we can kind of draw an imaginary line to the enemy main from the objective you're at, just to give you an idea of the shortest route it would take them to leave main and attack your position. But of course, on our eastern side, we have some protection due to the river, unless of course they have amphibious vehicles. Now, some of the pathing here is overlapped with objectives that we've already started talking about, but imagine if the enemy main was actually to the northwest. This is going to alter the perspective I have on where the enemies might attack from on most maps. But because of that river on the eastern side, we still have some protection. I'm just leaning more into the fact that they may be attacking from directly west of Torpedo or to the southwest, just based on their main position and the routes out of main. Let me illustrate this a little bit differently. So for these mains in Mutaha, they're basically top middle and bottom middle. Let's say the northern main is the enemy main. And for this example, we're going to use the intersection in the middle of the map as our defense point. Now, because the enemy main is directly north of the objective or pretty close to it, we'll expect that a lot of the enemy pressure will come directly from the north. That's not to say they couldn't set up on the east or west, maybe create a flank. You're just looking at the north being aware that, hey, this is the most direct route from their main. Whereas if we move their main to the northeast corner of the map, it's likely that the enemy push or attack may actually start from the east side or northeast side of our position. And of course, if the main was positioned to the northwest, we're likely going to see attacks coming in from the west or northwest of our position. And it's not that I'm trying to ignore their defensive positions as much as I'm trying to make sure that I account for the fact that folks may leave their main and travel directly to the objective. This starts to account for folks that may be respawning at main, grabbing a logistics vehicle to set up an attack that isn't tied to the defensive position. So if you're aware of the white line between teams' defensive objectives and the path from main, you may have a better insight into where attacks may be coming from. Now, to add a little bit more detail and sophistication to this, I'm going to start looking at routes out of main or routes that the enemies might be using to get a fob placed. And I'm looking for routes that are connected to areas that may give some concealment or cover for a HAB and fob to be placed. So here in the example, between train station and Torpedo, perhaps they're using the main MSR on the west side of Torpedo to come down and apply pressure on the west side of Torpedo Factory. So in this example I'm displaying, Torpedo Factory is our defense point. The road on the west side, the main road that is, could be an avenue for the enemy team to travel along to get a fob set up maybe to the northwest or western side of Torpedo. Now, this could be risky for them. They may go further west and wrap around, potentially coming in on the southern side of Torpedo. But typically what you're looking for is to be able to take a logistics vehicle down a road that leads to somewhere where you can have a place to put a fob. So let's say they take that main western road, and let's use squad calc to plot a couple places where enemies might put an attack fob. I'm basing this off games I've had and where people have placed fobs for better or worse. And let's say for this example, we just don't have anybody playing defense on that road, so they have open reign to place something. They could place something closer to train station, which could act as both defensive backup and an attack fob. Maybe they pull off the main MSR and they place the fob and HAB in the trees to the west on the hill next to Torpedo. Or they wrap around and go to the southern side of Torpedo, which could be the most effective out of all of these potentially. The culmination is that we know they may come in from the north across the white line, but their most effective attack is possibly from the west or the southwest of our defensive position. And this is based off the map and the routes they have from their main to the attack. These basic concepts can help you prepare for an attack, but let's talk about how to position for it. And we're going to discuss buffering. So first, let's illustrate what typically happens. This is going to be an example taking place on Gorodok at the hilltop bunkers. So let's say you have about 6 individuals all playing close to the cap radius. Maybe you've just gotten the point captured and you're preparing to defend it. But you're playing pretty tightly packed, all within the cover that the objective provides, while also being within the capturable radius of the objective. But you're not really looking for intel or trying to defend the position outside of the capture radius. This is where the problem lies, is because it allows the enemy force to actually push the objective. And if they begin to outnumber you, they could potentially start capping the objective while you're on it. So basically, you're playing a very small area. You're staying too confined to a space instead of trying to spread out and control the area, not only within the radius, but surrounding the capturable radius of the objective. Let's say we have an enemy push coming from the northeast. So I'm going to mark a fob marker here and re-illustrate the lines for basically the same sort of enemy movement. We're only really going to know this if we start playing a little bit outside of just the walls of the objective and start to look to see where the enemies may be coming in from. Where is contact happening? But by simply pushing 3 soldiers outside of the confined area of the objective into some concealed areas with trees, rocks, we start to create layers of defense that the enemy team has to go through just to get to the objective. This can slow down or disrupt an enemy push, especially if you start using terrain or what's in front of you on the map. So while your guys may be in concealment on these rocks or in the trees, you now are forcing the enemy team to come across an open road to be able to get into that forest where you have guys lurking. And we're also keeping in mind that we want that height advantage. So by stationing guys outside of the walls, we still have some height above those that may be pushing from the northeast. And by using some of the filters on Squad Calc, I can at least illustrate this for that demonstration. So just by setting up this way, we have taken advantage of the terrain and we've set up a decent defense to actually slow the enemy push by defending the cap radius at large, by defending the objective from not within, but on the edges or outside of it. Now, the other way to look at this is that we're trying to create layers around an objective. So let me use Strat Sketch to help illustrate this. Now we know this red area that I'm marking is where the enemies are coming from, so we can assume that on the eastern side of this road, that's where a lot of their force may be occupying. So it's going to be difficult for us to push out into that, especially with a smaller force. Whereas this lighter blue is going to indicate the open area between us and that tree line. This again provides us a benefit because we can shoot down into that open area as they begin to cross, again slowing them down, picking them off, and making that push more difficult. Next, we have the tree line just outside of the objective. This is an area that we're going to occupy with just a couple of people to try and slow them down. These guys are the same guys that may be shooting into the open space where the road is, but they're also going to eat up enemies that are crossing the road, that make it across. And finally, we have the darker blue, which is more so the guys that are on cap directly, maybe playing within the bunker walls, being the last line of defense. But what this simple illustration is supposed to indicate is that the enemies have to go through 3 zones in order to get control of the objective. While this doesn't cover every variable, hopefully gives you an idea of how to position for defense and deflect an attack. Now let's take it a step further with roles and how they can operate within this format. So first, let's look at how we task certain kits. I'm going to put a hat towards the northeast side of our objective. I'll put a rifleman south of him and a machine gunner up on the hill a little bit further south from the rifleman. Then a mix of medics and riflemen to cover the objective, playing a little bit more conservatively and watching flanks. And if I have a lat, I might also place them close to the road, playing a little bit more to the south of the hat kit. All while I've got 1 or 2 people keeping eyes on the western side of the camp to see if anybody is coming through the woods to push the objective. And if I'm a squad leader, I could put a rally on the southern side of the objective, maybe down here in the southern bunker, which may be an early alert in case enemies are actually coming in from that direction, from the south of our position. If the rally is burned and suddenly disappears from the map, we know somebody is south of us and we can react to that. Now you may question why I have my AT focus on the east side. Well, from map knowledge, I know that the west side can be a little bit difficult to traverse through the trees. So I'm really looking for a vehicle to run down this road or maybe try to assault the position, hence why the hat and lat are both favoring that side with a rifleman nearby to rearm. And since the lat and hat are separated, if the vehicle continues on their path, the lat could potentially finish off what the hat has already attacked. But I think the basics of buffering are here that you can start to utilize in your gameplay. But the next thing we need to discuss is respawning. Now I have videos both on rally placement and radio placement. But what I want to discuss more so in this video is HAB placement. And I realize that the radio placement and the HAB placement are sort of intertwined, but bear with me. And the reason I want to discuss HABs is because there's kind of two trains of thought. One is that you should put HABs directly on point, and the other is that you should keep HABs off of point. Now, some of the argument for placing a HAB directly on point is to wrangle blueberries. It's to keep everybody at the center of the objective or very close to the middle of the objective so that as soon as they spawn, they leave the HAB and they are on cap. They are defending cap by nature just by spawning. But the counterpoint to that is that if you keep it on objective, let's say directly on or very close to it, it is A, easier to find, and B, it can be easier to proxy, especially if a large enemy push is coming. Whereas placing the HAB off a point or near point can help sustain that defense even if the enemy team is making an advance on the objective. A HAB off point can also promote more movement around the objective versus just strictly in the middle. Now, that doesn't mean your HAB isn't susceptible to an enemy attack. For example, you're going to have guys that have some experience going after the HAB long before they try to attack the objective because they want to disrupt your ability to defend it before they try to cap it. There are some objectives that are just on islands. For example, grain processing on Gorodok is just in the middle of a field. If you can defend that position and keep enemies from actually getting up to the walls, you can protect that HAB being on point. If we go back to Torpedo Factory, there's multiple examples of placing either on or off point in covered areas to protect from mortars. Now, Train Station is a very different objective because it's a smaller building, less defensible, but you could put a HAB directly on point or in surrounding buildings, and there's plenty of them. This is a prime example of a point where I'm going to place it near the point, but not directly on the cap radius. And I would note that I'm marking buildings that are pretty open and available for HAB to be placed, not something that requires a lot of SL creativity to try to fit the HAB into a building. But regardless of how creative you decide to be with the HAB placement, the idea here is to try and find a way to make a HAB that is useful for defending a position. There have certainly been times where, based on the rounds previously played on a server, I know that I just have to put it on the defensive objective directly there because blueberries otherwise are not going to play defense. We have to have some form of spawn control. Whereas there are those rounds where you have to place it off of the objective because it's just too contested consistently on the objective to actually maintain something directly on the cap. I think this is a helpful thing to understand for more than just SLs, but all players, to get an idea of why HABs may be placed where they are and to utilize them effectively based on that situation. With all that said, I think there's some good concepts in here that if you are a relatively new player or an intermediate player, you can get some ideas about how to play defense at a little bit higher level. So if you have any additional tips for defense, throw them in the comments down below and share with others. Hit the subscribe button and leave a like on the video. I'd very much appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.